Hello and welcome to the Gentle Rebel podcast. I'm Andy Mort, and this is where we explore the intersection of sensitivity, creativity, and the impact of culture within, around, and between us. I am really happy to be sharing a conversation this week with a returning guest, Jacob Nordby. Jacob has been on the podcast a couple of times over the years to talk about various things, often relating to creativity and exploring what it means to be us through our creative spirit. So the last time we spoke was back at the start of 2021. So it had been a while. It's really, lovely to chat again with him. I'd had the urge to check in with him and see if he fancied a catch up and a chat about responding to a world that seems to be freewheeling. I don't know if you're feeling that, but yes, a lot of people are. Stuff is just pretty chaotic and out of control at the moment. And I'd read an article that he'd written, which held a question at the heart of it that really caught my attention. And it was sort of, the profound simplicity of it was sitting with me as I went about my week, really. And the question was, who will I be in the face of this? And I like a juicy question. I like a juicy prompt that has ambiguity kind of weaved into the heart of it, and it can lead in different directions as you sort of explore it from different angles. And there might be an initial response to it where you think this question means this thing, but then it's like, maybe there's something more in it as well. You know, I will be someone in the face of this, whether or not I choose to. Does that someone reflect what I believe or what I value or what I hope to be true? Is it a reflection of the world that I want to be part of creating? Or is that someone that I am in the face of this actually contributing to something else, a world that I don't want to see come into existence, but actually the part that I'm playing, whatever that might be, is bringing that about? And so this is a very much, I think it's a dynamic question. It's alive in every moment that we encounter. And it's a deeply personal question that connects us with our place in a broader context, in a social context. And as I say, it anchors us into the present of any situation, any moment, any relationship, any experience that we are encountering. And so it can be a liberating question to realize that we, have a degree of choice about how we approach things. Who will I be in the face of this? I can choose how I kind of show up in this situation, but it can also be a prison if we let the application of, exterior identities and performative actions kind of infuse our response to that question. Who will I be? How do I want to be perceived? How do I want people to think of me in the context of this? And then using the perception that other people have of us as a measure of self-worth. That can get imprisoning and confusing and overwhelming if that is, what sort of drives us. So I'll leave that question hanging as we get into this conversation. It's a question that I do come back to throughout the conversation, but I think it's something that can just maybe sit there in the back of your mind as you listen. And I'd love to hear what you think, and if this brings up anything for you, please do feel free to get in touch with me. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Also want to apologize about my voice and my energy levels at times during this. I woke up with a really bad cold that morning, and my head was operating at an even slower pace than usual. So I've edited out as many of the face noises as possible, but yes, some could remain. So I apologize if your ears are as sensitive as mine to that kind of thing. I hope it won't be a distraction from the content of the conversation. So yes, all right, here we go.
We're about to witness the greatest miracle of the machine age.
The Gentle Rebel Podcast.
I'm so glad you could come. This is going to be such an exciting day. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will.
Oh man, Jacob, it is really lovely to speak with you again. I think it was beginning of 2021 we last spoke.
Yeah, that feels about 3 lifetimes ago now, doesn't it?
A
Just
lot
4
has
years.
happened since then. Yeah. It was around the time, I think, was it when you just released The Creative Cure and we were
Oh,
talking
that's
about some of the
right.
ideas
Yes.
from
Yes.
that? Yeah. And so, it would be great to just spend a bit of time catching up with what's been going on for you personally since then. And anything that's, I guess, surprised you maybe about the way that the book has been received and applied, and things about the writer's room as well that I know you've been involved with, and we'll get into some of the stuff around the, I guess, global events, things going on in the world, and how we can hold and respond to them in gently creative ways that feel like you're actually doing something
Yeah.
with that.
Well, I'm delighted to talk about the book and all that, but wow, what you just said, I just feel that juice there. So if you want to dive in the deep end first, that would be great.
Sure. We can absolutely do that. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I was, sort of reflecting on ahead of this conversation was an article that you'd written. I think it was fairly recently. I couldn't work. I don't know if you've got dates on them, but it feels very appropriate for this time. And it was around this question: who will I be in the face of this? And so you were referring to Viktor Frankl, his book Man's Search for Meaning, and some of the juicy ideas in that. I guess I just saw that question as a really nice hook that we can get our teeth into. And maybe just start with what your thinking was behind that article and what that question means to you, and see where we go off that.
Yeah. Well, Andy, I just love the work you do with, highly sensitive, introverted people. I know that doesn't cover everything you do, but I feel like a lot of us who live in those Venn diagram circles, I certainly do, have been feeling a sense of tremendous overwhelm. It feels as if the loudest voices right now in the world, across whatever spectrum you want to look at, political or whatever, the loudest voices are getting the most attention. And I think that's always been the case. I'm curious if you share some version of the experience of feeling as if, reminds me of Walter in The Big Lebowski. Has the whole world gone crazy?
Yes, very much so. It feels like, I mean, every day I'm just sort of, you wake up braced for what's going to come out today. And there's also the element of, I guess, almost a morbid curiosity to keep on looking at it and to keep
Sure.
and I've been reflecting on what that is as well. Yeah. And, there's definitely a desire to be informed and engaged, because there is real stuff happening to real people that matters. And, it's not, for me personally, an option to check out of that and to turn off the news and all of that kind of thing. But at the same time, very aware of the unproductive or unconstructive patterns that I can fall into, just like watching YouTube and seeing another commentary video about whatever it is that's happened now. And just realizing, okay, that's actually not all that conducive to any kind of positive and like generative energy in me. And that is again one of the reasons why I thought it would be just great to speak to you, because creativity is such a core part of who you are and what you do, and what you believe is important as, an expression of our humanity and everything, and how we process and cope and express ourselves within these kinds of things. So Yes, that's the long answer to your question. I do feel that.
I was hoping you'd give a long answer. Yeah, no, you're always so thoughtful, and you're looking below the top layer of things. And that's why I was so happy to say yes to join you here. Yeah, it's interesting, Andy. I would love to say that I have this rock solid discipline and I keep my attention trained, toward what I would love to create and I'm not getting distracted. And that's not true. I'm right there with you, and I think that, how old are you, Andy?
Nearly 40.
Okay, so I'm 52. So we've lived through a lot of the same things, and I've been here just a little longer, but a lot of similar things. And I think that for a lot of us, there has been this, since we were little kids, since we became first aware of things outside of the four walls of our homes or whatever, where there's been this sense of tension between, political factions, economic factions, whatever. There's this tension, but there's always been a sense of things just kind of move back and forth about an inch, so it's felt more like gridlock. And I'm not just speaking politically. I'm talking about kind of across the spectrum of our experience as humans, whether it's economics or the evolution of or dissolution of religion or whatever it might be. There's a sense of tension, like, okay, and I think that that's given my generation, Gen X, I think that's given our generation a sense of almost hopelessness of meaningful change happening. Okay. And then, so fast forward to where we are right now. And last time we talked was, right during COVID, and there was all that tension going on. And fast forward to today, and I think we're living in a period where massive change actually is happening. It's not just being talked about. It's not just being wished for. It's actually underway. And I see that as the breakdown of really familiar old structures that once kind of held the experience of life in place. And I've been talking about this for a long time. I think 2012, I moved back from Austin, Texas, back here to Boise, and gave a talk where I talked about the pillars of life for most people, represent the government, big business, religion, the press, and a lot of those four pillars sort of held the fabric of existence more or less stable for a lot of people. The sense of, they have my back in some way, or there's a sense of community here, or, this is over my pay grade, but it's, but smarter people than I am are keeping things going the way they should be going. And I think that I don't feel like this is any way a partisan statement. I think the level of trust in any of those institutions has deteriorated drastically in the last 5 years, especially. It's been deteriorating for a long time, but the last 5 years has been this massive slide in people's sense of security and safety that gives rise to this tremendous level of anxiety. Those of us who have been really wanting change for a long time, like some things to fundamentally be rectified or, made more equal. The fact is, like Pablo Picasso said, every act of creation is first an act of destruction. So we find ourselves in, what just feels like a big mess kind of on a daily basis right now. And that gives rise to anxiety, tremendous anxiety. When we're in anxiety, our psyches go seeking certainty. So we go looking for the answers, why, or even not even so much why as, is this really happening? So we go looking for certainty, and it can be really hard to pull our attention away from that. And I'm not going to scold any of us who has been looking kind of like with the avid attention, morbid attention, I think that's the word you used earlier, at what feels like a train wreck in progress. I think that that's a very natural experience. And so I'm going to just leave it with an ellipsis at the end, and you can take it wherever you want to from there.
Yeah, I think that's such an astute point. Yeah. And because I kind of looking within that change and within that destruction that comes before creation, it feels like whether that's the train wreck that is there a stuckness here? And I guess it's looking, do we have a vision, or where do we find a vision that moves us out of this? What feels like, and due to all kinds of things, I think social media algorithms are a big part of actually just rewarding basking in the train wreck rather than finding a way through it together with a positive vision and a sense of where we're going. I mean, this is something I felt hugely after to like the Brexit referendum here in the UK, and we left the EU, and it was all like such a toxic debate around things that just weren't all that helpful at all. And then you had two firm sides. You had kind of the people who wanted to leave and the people who wanted to remain, and that kind of continued afterwards, and we're still stuck in the tail of that. But I was kind of pro remaining with the EU because of various reasons, but there was a point at which I was like, okay, we've made that decision, we've got to somehow find a way to make that work, and to find some kind of opportunity in that to bring us together, to identify a vision that, okay, what does the UK now look like, having left the EU in that way? What are we going towards? And we've just never had that. And when you talk about, that distrust in institutions and things, and, I've definitely felt that sense of, I thought there were people in charge who knew where we were going, and they were taking us where we kind of collectively decide we want to go. And it just feels like there's a big gaping hole in the middle of all that where there is no vision, and there's no adults in charge.
Yeah, it's weird to be in my 50s and go, oh, I guess I'm one of the adults right now. Oh my God, that's not a good sign. But I think I'd like to go back to something you started to talk about as far as a unifying vision, or even not requiring everyone to share a vision, but even those of us who really want to see healing, want to see things come back together. So we're not leaning on the side of let's just burn it all down or fight each other, genuinely want to build bridges, and mend things. And I think that's one of the challenges we have right now, Andy, is realizing that much of what would have made sense to us in the past, because we were looking at it through the lens of, well, this is what's possible within the framework, within the status quo, within, the forces that play back and forth, this is what's possible. So it was a little easier, I think, to form a vision based on that. And that's what I love that you keep bringing it back to creativity, because creativity is something that happens. It's where something real, original, and rare is formed, original, something new, something that isn't exactly like what's come before. And I think that a lot of us, people who are self-identified creatives, have been frustrated for decades, if not longer, that we keep doing the same goddamn thing over and over again with just incremental differences back and forth. It's like, okay, let's paint it a different color, but we're still using the same basic paint. And so I feel like we really are in a time that requires us to step out of the known. And we're kind of not just stepping out. It feels like we're being pushed out of the known and into that space where something truly original can be formed. And that's why I feel like creatives, again, of course, I feel that every human is creative, but those of us who are aware of our creativity and have been practicing it, we are actually called upon right now. And not necessarily to start great campaigns or, change the world, change the headlines. Some will do that, no doubt, but a lot of us can feel overwhelmed by feeling responsible to do that. And we don't realize that what really needs to happen the most valuable things that we can change, that we can affect or influence, need to happen right within our own arm's reach. They're not going to happen, in Parliament necessarily, or in the Congress here in the U.S. We hope that those leaders will begin to shift things and come together and come up with good solutions. But the fact is, what really needs to change and get creative, it exists within our own arm's reach. And as David White might say, we have to start small and close in. But I don't want to just use those phrases because they're neat. I love them. But I would love to talk with you about what that actually means. What does start small and close in inside of our own arm's reach? What does that mean to us right now? What can we actually do about that? What are those details,
Yeah, that'd be great to get into, because it is easy to talk in slogans and phrases, isn't it? And this is what we need. And that's why that question, who will I be in the face of this, really resonates as a maybe one branch of responding to that.
Yeah.
And just thinking about not just who do I want to be, but who am I already being in the face of this? Because it's like the Gandhi quote of like being the change that you want to see in the world. Like that, there's one side of that, which is the choice that you make to make that change. But the other side of it is also, we are part of the world. We are not stuck in traffic. We are traffic. We are, we're a member of that, like a part of that whole. And it's easy to think that we're disconnected and looking in. And this is something I notice in the way that people engage online. And when you see the very hostile things being said in the name of kindness, and it's like, I'm not sure that is necessarily going to take us where we are espousing we want to get to.
Yes, good point.
And so in that sense, we are the change that we will see in the world, whether or not it's the change we want to see. How we show up, how we engage is that small part contributing to something bigger. And it can feel so small that it's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's almost like the vote. My vote doesn't matter. Like it's one vote. And same with that question. Who will I be in the face of this? I'm going to be someone in the face of this. How much autonomy do I take in my answer to that question? And I was thinking about this earlier, and how we often talk about adversity revealing the truth of someone. Like, it shows us who we really are. And that is certainly true on a lot of occasions, but there's also, it shows us who we've been socialized to be, or how we've been conditioned to react. And so again, grappling with that question, who will I be in the face of this? How do I strip away that stuff and find me? Who do I want to be in the face of this? Or who am I? And how do I just get rid of the stuff that's built up around? There's no coherence to this answer, but I'll do the same and just hand it back and see if there's anything there for you that.
I think that sense of there's no coherence in it, I feel like that's a really important thing to accept, that we're all feeling our way forward right now, Andy. And it's not going to be necessarily elegant or eloquent. We're all feeling our way forward. In fact, the people who say they know for sure what's coming or how to do it are likely not truly settling into their creative nature. That means we're likely still trying to apply, in recovery movements, they like to use the phrase, my best thinking got me here. And what philosopher, I think it might have been Buckminster Fuller, who said something like, you can never build the new when you approach it with the same level of thinking, that created the old, essentially. And I feel like that's what we've been seeing a lot of in our world. Of course, I'm in the American bubble, and it feels so everywhere that it's hard to remember that other parts of the world are dealing with very similar struggles. And so there's a principle here. There's a principle, and I feel like, again, those of us who are self-identified as creatives, if we can realize that everything I'm looking around my room right now, and the picture frames and the lamp and this computer that we're communicating through, everything started in imagination. Everything. And, it's easy to feel a little impatient with the John Lennon who says, imagine all the people living life in peace. But the fact is, as a human species, we've been imagining our way into exactly what it is we're experiencing right now. And the Toltecs, the people who wrote the Four Agreements, come through the Toltec lineage. But the Toltecs have a principle called metote, which is essentially, and Jung would call it the collective unconscious. The Toltecs call it the dream of the world. So we're all dreaming together. And those of us who have been holding a different kind of dream, often ours seems so tender and fragile. It's like a new sprout that we're really wanting to see grow strong and become more ubiquitous. But we can feel that it's so threatened by the harshness of the dialogue and the harshness of what's happening outside of us right now. And I think we forget how powerful that initial thing is, the imagination, because it's so easy. Oh my God. And we get conditioned from a very young age, Andy, to use our imaginations for what it's really not meant for, which is we constantly are imagining the threat. We're imagining the other shoe going to drop. We're imagining the failure or the rejection and all of that. And that's so natural. I'm not scolding anyone. I'm not some life coach saying here, you just need to think better. It's like, no, that's very natural for all of us. We're conditioned, and that goes way back into evolutionary biology, why we do this. But the fact is, if we can spend a few minutes more every day, just a few minutes, spend time scrolling, spend time, proving to yourself, confirming that, yes, big stuff really is happening. This isn't just politics or whatever as usual. But if we spend a little time each day going, okay, but what would I love to create? The world I would love to experience, like you said earlier, being the change. What would I love to create? How can I step into that a little today? Does that mean, again, starting small and within my own arm's reach? Does that mean that I catch myself judging the guy in front of me in traffic and assuming a lot of things about where he might stand on this or that and judging him? Or do I catch that? Not to say it won't happen, but do I catch it and go, wait a minute, this is a fellow traveler. What happens if I just remove my energy from that bias toward assuming the worst? Just that one thing, and it's silent. It doesn't have to be done out loud or online. It's just a silent shift of going, oh, what if I just take a moment here and use my imagination differently rather than imagining this person as an enemy? What if I imagine them as a fellow traveler? I wonder what they're afraid of. I wonder what they need today,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that does go against so much. I've been doing a bit of a deep dive into the history of self-help recently. Just
interesting.
Yeah, kind of seeing. I mean, part of the question is, how have we got here, and why are we still struggling after 100 odd years of self-help book writing?
Yeah, interesting.
And one of the things I've noticed is the language, the very oppositional language, and language that pits us against things, whether it's internal stuff. So you're one of the first book that I've covered is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. But there's a lot of this quest to control the mind and to control the quality of the thoughts that we have. And a lot of that comes through, getting rid of stuff. So fighting and battling and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's
repressing.
It's just opened my eyes to the amount of that kind of language that we just have, that we swim in. And everything is, whether it's me against them, or they're trying to stop me from having something, or like, and it's like, oh yeah, that's absolutely everywhere. So it's no wonder that, I mean, it kind of infuses and informs how we think of ourselves. And we're in this constant, within self-help, personal development. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Oh, you've got to just overcome this thing, or, grow beyond that old thing. Like all of these things that, what if that's actually a part of the journey, and the becoming is those things functioning together. And one of the, something that just came up as you were speaking before was not tolerating, but embracing difference as a part of, like, again, so often we're trying to fight for, like, my beliefs are right. I want everyone to believe what I believe. And I was speaking to someone earlier about high sensitivity research, and we were talking about the spectrum of sensitivity, and how, at one end you've got people who are naturally less sensitive, and then at the other end you've got people who are naturally highly sensitive, and that's all natural. Like that's all part of who we are as humans, and it's all necessary for how we operate collectively to survive as a species. And it's very easy to be like, oh, my level of sensitivity, that's the right thing, and we function in this way, and we want the world to look like this, so therefore everybody should come on board with that. And in reality, that's not going to make a good a good society. It's not going to make for a good world. But again, coming to that starting small thing, it's just acknowledging that I am me, you are you, we are different, and that's okay. Yeah. Again, a lot of things there.
Wow, so much. I'm really glad you brought up the history of self-help, because you're right. I'm getting ready to say, especially in America. I don't think that's accurate. I will say in America, from our formation, we've held a really strong narrative, self-narrative of being the good guy, of being the genuinely virtuous, show up. And, there's so many reasons for that. But one of the reasons is the early puritanical framework of things that goes back to what you were saying about much of the teaching that is supposed to be helping us actually improve and grow is actually trying to suppress and deny and fight back what they might call our darker nature or our weaker selves. I've gotten to the place where anyone who's kind of influential, if they're just speaking in fortune cookie level platitudes or tweet length, I realize that Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it now, you can ramble on quite a bit longer than you used to be able to. But when you and I first started with it, it was 140 characters or whatever it was, 128 or something. It was very short. But and I think that brevity has been useful in helping us get clearer. But also we end up bashing each other with headlines, and not just each other, ourselves. I love what you're saying here, Andy. If we become aware of how we're speaking, both internally and externally, we find that so much of that is violent. So much of that is intolerant. And it's easy to go, well, you're being intolerant of me, but no, it's wait, it all begins within. Am I being violent to myself? Am I actually being intolerant of the range of who I am? Carl Jung said to accept oneself completely is the most terrifying thing. And so I feel like we are at a time of deep shadow work. And I just used that phrase, and so I'm not going to rattle on about it. I have some thoughts, but I would love to hear, what does that phrase, what comes up for you when you hear that?
To me, it's like mirror work on my, I guess, my creative path. It is everything. So what infuses my music is that ability to open up and see the rawness in the wounds and say the things that I would maybe not be comfortable saying in a conversation, and then just being able to have that conversation with myself as I love the Flannery O'Connor thing of like, I write because I don't know what I think until I read what I say.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the same with music. It's almost got a dreamlike quality to it in that, okay, those lyrics, what am I saying there? Where have they come from? What does the way that this melody sits on top of these chords say about what is going on for me? Because I take quite an intuitive approach to that sort of raw processing time, I suppose. If I just sit down at the piano and start expressing myself, it has a lack of thinking to it, a lack of control, and I might just hit record on my voice memo app and see what happens, forget that it's recording, and then and it's so fascinating to go back and listen and be like, oh, okay, there's stuff there. And so the shadow, I think it's like, just listening to, okay, what is that shadow part saying through that process. But what's the shadow work for you? How do you?
Yeah, well, I just love where you went with that, Andy. What I heard in that was a lot of vulnerability, a lot of being willing to let your feelings come to the surface and be with them, without saying you shouldn't be here, without saying, oh, this is embarrassing, or this is weak, or this is greedy, or this is whatever it might be, just being with what's there. So I mean, I love I love Carl Jung's work. I also love the fact that I saw it recently. He said, "I love that Alan Watts isn't a Jungian." And someone asked, "Well, why?" He said, "Because I don't want anyone to try to be me. I want them to be themselves." And I love that, which is so consistent with everything that he taught. It's really, how can I turn the mirror so you're looking to yourself, not to become like me, and I think that actually connects well with what you were saying about self-help, and where it's become is this, oh, if I can go find a model or a guru or some leader who I see embodies the qualities that I would love to have in myself, and Carl Jung would call that projection or transference, that if I can just model my behavior, if I can amend myself to where I am essentially becoming that person, then I will be worthy. Then I will be acceptable. And what Jung might say when looking at that would be, say, I don't want to know about your acceptable parts. That's what's formed your ego. That's what's formed your self-perception. I want to know about the parts of you that don't work, that you're ashamed of, that you're afraid of. And I'll give an example of that in my life, Andy. I have always been so uncomfortable with having power, and because it always feels like domination. It always feels like control or coercion to me. I'm aware that there are different expressions of power, but I've always shied away from it. Partly, I had a very domineering, angry father. Glad that we became friends and did a lot of healing work together before he died about 15 years ago. But that definitely was formative for me. I grew up in a very repressive and difficult church environment. That was formative for me. And so I took things from my personality that could have healthy expression and shoved them into the shadow. It's like, no, you don't belong here. This is dark. It's ugly. It doesn't work. I don't want to be seen that way. And so I would say I'm in an ongoing process of learning how to effectively and ethically and authentically express power, you know?
That's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I love that. Yeah, that idea of pushing things into the shadow. Yeah. So it's kind of like it's an intentional choice or a thing you do that you decide, right, I never want to see that, or I never want to embrace that for myself, so I'm putting it down here. Or it's just that sort of pattern, the thing that you just do without conscious thought. And that's just, as you're saying, looking towards the guru, looking towards or projecting onto the person that has everything that you think you want. And so you give your power to that person, really. It's kind of that image of the shadow being both with us and behind us. And I think it is that part that it's the unconscious, or the shadow, however you sort of think about it, that it's coming to terms with that and being willing to look at that hopefully enables you to have a less disempowering relationship with those figures, with the self-help guru and the political, and I think this is part of what we're seeing just so much, is this attachment to whether it's celebrity figures or these people that we're hero worshipping and seeing as the almost messianic, like they're going to save us personally, or they're going to save humanity or whatever. And it's like, unfortunately, it's not going to happen like that. It's a collective endeavor.
It's a collective endeavor. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really sitting here trying to feel into how to translate, a term like shadow work and some of the things we're discussing here, how to translate that more into real life for people. And I think you just touched on it, this clinging to these figures as our spokespeople, essentially. It's like, what that guy said or that person said, that's what I mean, and they're stronger or louder or have a larger audience or something than I do. So I'll just sort of cede my thought, my own choice to whatever they say. We're also watching ourselves build these figures up and tear them down at kind of blinding speed right now. It's kind of like, was it Sun Tzu in The Art of War? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I think what's happening right now is a lot of us tend to see a new champion rise because they're supporting an idea we hope will gain more traction. And then if we find one small flaw in them, we immediately tear them down and they're a terrible person. And, it's like, oh my God, folks, that's not going to work. But on a very personal level, I don't have this thought fully formed, so I'll bounce it back to you. But how can we take that understanding that the self that we would love to be seen as, that represents the ego, let's say, the self that we would love to be seen as is only part of ourselves. And if we continue trying to keep that image firmly in place all the time, it actually is cutting us off from the rest of who we are, and it's cutting us off from other humans. It's cutting us off from the collective itself, because it can't be just one way of seeing, one way of wanting to be seen. Yes, I always want to be seen as generous, as kind. I want to be seen as a healer, as a bridge builder, and I have many impulses that are not consistent with that, Andy.
It's very true. And what do we do with that?
Yeah, what do we do with that?
I mean, coming back to what you just said about the lifting up and tearing down that we're seeing just constantly with figures, and looking for that little flaw that we can use to pull them apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the dehumanization of people, whether it's, like making someone monstrous or making someone sort of deifying someone.
Yeah.
And they're two sides of the same coin, really. Yeah. And we, I think, just do ourselves and do them and do the things that we believe in and the causes that we care about a real disservice when we don't allow people to be human in that sense. Yeah. And I think as you look around and see the size of platforms that people are trying to, manage and live with, where there must be a huge amount of cognitive dissonance when you have millions of followers as a human being who, we've not evolved to cope with that, and to have that level of power and authority, and to have people so sycophantically vying for our love and whatever, that actually is such a horrific thing that we give to people, however much we might believe in what they do. Actually, it's such an inhuman thing. And then to add on that, like, you're expected to be perfect, and when you're not, we will cast you aside and find the next person that we haven't yet come to realize is imperfect too. Because it
reminds me of the practice in Rome during a period where a new Caesar or emperor would come, and they would build statues themselves everywhere, and then when they would be inevitably overthrown at some point, they would go and actually chisel and smash the faces off those statues, and they would seek to erase the record, the evidence that person had ever existed, because they were so fucking terrible, honestly. So I understand the impulse, but the thing I was reading about that, I wish I could remember the source on this, Andy, but they were saying that actually does a tremendous disservice to ourselves by attempting to erase the ugly parts of our histories or of our natures. It does a huge disservice, because we only want to see ourselves in this light as noble, as ethical, as whatever it might be. And so, and when we go and try to erase our own history or the history of a nation or whatever, we actually are doing ourselves a tremendous disservice, because we are actually forcing more into the shadow. It's like, no, that does not fit our self-image, so we will not acknowledge it. And as Jung said, and I think this is where he did not depart from his mentor Freud. Whatever is repressed will be expressed later in darker ways, and whatever we resist persists, and again, these are clever little phrases, but I think if we take them in and ask myself, what am I resisting today? What am I resisting seeing? What am I resisting even acknowledging? And if I'm willing to, even in private, even in the pages of my journal, I mean, I do that daily, and so that's a reflexive thing for me to take these things out and look at them. And it took some years to feel safe, really admitting to myself my less than noble thoughts and impulses, or my angers, or whatever it might be that don't fit nicely with my own image of who I think I am and who I think people see me as. I also love Robert A. Johnson, wrote the book Owning Your Own Shadow. Have you ever come across that one?
I've not read that one.
No, it's Robert Johnson. He was personally worked with Jung some and became quite the psychoanalyst and all of that. But his book, Owning Your Own Shadow, I think that was one of the most useful books on the topic I've ever run across. But he would talk about, and this is probably where it starts to come back into what's small and close in, Andy. He would say, it's not that we need to let the shadow part express itself like in a feral way. Like you see people who do that. It's like, I'm just me. And they are actually being quite brutal and inconsiderate. And they prize that in themselves. And, the teaching here when it comes to intelligent shadow work is, Robert Johnson said, it's not about expressing it in unrepressed ways. It's about paying the shadow out intelligently. So he gave an example of that, and I think your listeners can come up with their own personal examples of it. But he said, I was a young psychotherapist. I had a practice, a beautiful office. I just gotten married. We bought a house. Our lives were perfect. Everything I had dreamed about was coming true. And he said, I would sit there on Thursday in my office after the last client had left. And he said, I would have these terrifying urges to get in my car and drive away from all of it and never come back, just abandon the whole thing. And he said, being an analyst, he put that under the microscope in himself, and he realized, I don't really want to do away with anything in my life. I love my wife. I love my work. I love the life we're building. But there is that rebel impulse, that pirate part that wants to not have it all tidy like this. And he's like, many people, when faced with that, would go have affairs, or they would, lose all their money gambling, or they'd get into drugs. And he said, I knew I didn't want to destroy the life that I had spent so long building. So he said, what I did was make a deal with myself that on Thursday night each week, I would drive about 40 miles away to where there was this diner. And he said, I would sit on the hood of my car and eat the greasiest cheeseburger I could possibly order and a malt. And he said, I would smoke a cigarette. And he said, for some reason, that scratched that itch to be a little bit rebellious and not contained. And he's like, that became one example of paying out the shadow intelligently. So there was that impulse. And rather than just turn it away and say, no, that doesn't fit until something broke, which often happens. People unconsciously go out and have affairs and mess up their relationships or whatever it might be. He said, I really didn't want to break my life. But he said, I became aware that this impulse was going to do nothing but get stronger and stronger until something had to give. So I loved that example. And I think looking for that in my life, like, no, I do not want to go and actually do physical harm to people in my town who don't share my political views, for example. But there's so much more pressure for that to become true. So rather than just deny that in myself and say, no, that's just for the bad people, how can I pay that out intelligently and symbolically so it is no longer this pressure that's building up that will eventually become expressed in a dark way,
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true. I love that. Well, I can't remember the phrase that you used, but wanting to embrace the not neatness of, when everything's, we might consciously have this desire to have everything nicely, all our ducks in a row, everything nicely boxed and categorized and neat. But actually there's often that thing, that inner rebel or whatever it is within us that, Freud talked about the death drive, didn't he? Like the impulse to do things that are actively harmful to ourselves. Yeah. And it sounds like there's maybe, I don't know enough about that kind of thing, but like a kind of crossover link there, and sort of harnessing that before it becomes a destructive drive both to ourselves and to those around us, where you just turn it outside or outwards. And I love that kind of linking back to what you're saying about the Roman scratching off the faces of the emperors and trying to deny the past, or sort of taking down statues or whatever, and the conversations around that that trend, I suppose, often come back to this idea of we need to have that placed within the shadow that we see. Like it's part of the story of how we got here, who we are, how we've become what we are, and being able to look at the darkest parts of the story of becoming is a really important part of moving forwards in a more healed way, I suppose, like healing being the integration of all of those parts and carrying that with us rather than eradicating it, like, trying to extract that past and pretend that it didn't exist. And
yeah. Well, and I would love to loop back in here, Andy, where, because I love the work you do. It is so gentle, and it's inviting people into gentleness, and curiosity, and not necessarily the great heroic acts that maybe we feel are called for in a time like this with so much change going on. I know I have that at times. I was the oldest of 6 kids and had to be very responsible at a young age. And so I sometimes struggle with the sense of responsibility. I should be doing more. I should be doing bigger things. Like, the world feels crazy. I should be doing, like, I'm responsible to be a better or more prominent or more effective leader in some way. But I love the work you do, inviting us back into gentleness. And I would love for your listeners to imagine even the ability to place a higher value on small, simple, and even private acts. Because in a world that is so loud, and it's gotten louder, it almost seems like the only acts that are valuable are those that create great visible public momentum in some fashion. Or let's take it into capitalism and business. A lot of us who are in some fashion developing practices of work that we do with people, or gig work that we do, or whatever, we can often feel that we're not doing enough, and that we are falling behind, and that our stuff just must not be good enough, or we would be making a full-time living at it, or whatever that story might be. And I would love to, if we could all just unhitch our minds for a moment from the work you're doing, to make some music by yourself, for yourself, in your living room at your piano, or the basil and tomato plants on your back patio that you go out and water each day, and take a few breaths out there as you're participating in the experience of life with these plants, or that group of people you get together with once or twice a month and read a book quietly. Even saying those things out loud, they seem almost pitiful to me as far as being effective in a world that's going through so much turmoil and change right now. But I would love for us to imagine that, as you said earlier, Andy, we are all connected. All of us are connected. And I don't like it when people leave it at that, as if it's like that's an answer in itself. We're all one. I mean, yes, lovely. Lovely. I saw something come up the other day that said, we're all separate islands, but we're connected below the surface of the sea. And that's not the full quote, but it was tidier than that. But basically that. But understanding that when people try to go to one side or the other with that, they go, oh, we're all connected, we're all one. As if that answers all the problems. It's like, no, deep down, we are all part of this great collective consciousness. We're all cells in the body. But we all are individual. We have individual experiences and individual ways of seeing what's going on. So if we could imagine that we are individual cells connected in a large body, the collective body, but I'm a cell and so are you. And if I can lower the inflammation within my own cell, if I can bring more health and life to this one cell, what we know from science and biology is that a diseased cell has much less energy, has much less power than a healthy cell. And so we might look around the world and say that the collective body is full of diseased cells. There's so much inflammation. There's no way to recover. The way to recover is to be a healthy cell. That's the way to recover. And we can't force all the cells around us. We can't go out on a campaign and say, you have to get healthy. It's probably not going to work. Yeah. What happens with a healthy cell, Andy, is that it actually spreads health to the cells around it, to what's within its own arm's reach, if you want to use that. It actually spreads health without even trying, without an agenda. It's simply by being healthy, I improve the health of those that are connected to me. And so if we have a responsibility right now, if we have a creative responsibility, is to focus as much as we can. I'm not going to use some purist, like every second of every day, 25/8 thing, but just spend a little more time each day focusing on what brings me into greater health. What brings me into greater health in my psyche, in my being, in my body? What brings me greater health? What if that? What if that is enough? And that's not to say we shouldn't reach out, we shouldn't contribute. If we feel to write something or speak something or create something or paint something that is meant to share with the world and change, perceptions in some way, wonderful, do that. But don't look at those great acts as the only thing that's effective. Like it all has to start here to begin with.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. I think you've kind of nailed one of the ways that I define gentleness in that as well. It starts with that healthy cell, really. We can get caught up in the urgency of we need to react. Like there's stuff very real happening right now.
Yeah.
And that is very true. And there are things that we must do and to respond to that with a sense of civic duty or responsibility for our fellow people. But that has to come from a place of gentleness, I think, if we're going to be the healthy cell rather than another diseased cell, because it's that contagion that happens where we pick up on what we might deem the toxicity of others, and we think, well, they're this big problem. We need to fight them fire with fire and react to what they're saying, what they're doing. And it might well be that you decide, on this occasion, there's the campaign that I want to embark on is giving them as good as they've given others. But unless that's a choice that you have made from that place, that Viktor Frankl kind of like the last of the human freedoms to choose our response, like to the between the stimulus and the response, there's that space that we can just dwell in, might be for a moment, just to think, okay, how do I want to be in this? What do I want to bring, and what might I bring if I allow that emotional reactivity and that volatility to dictate my actions? Am I just contributing to more of what I believe is the problem? And actually it's this escalating, the cycle of violence is a cycle of violence, called that for a reason, because it's this thing that requires an intervention in order for a creative direction to take us or to deviate us away from that loop that just gets faster and faster and more destructive. So, yes.
By the way, you might have noticed when you said something about gentleness just a couple of minutes ago, I haven't been feeling particularly emotional, but I tears sprang to my eyes, Andy, and I'm bringing that up for a reason. It's interesting that it wasn't even the words you were saying. I don't even know exactly why it evoked emotion in me, but I just felt this relief. And there was something about the energy, I think, of what you were saying that was like, yes, please, more of that. And you weren't saying something loudly. You weren't saying something that I can even connect intellectually to why it touched that feeling in me, but it was medicine. And I think that if we can remember that it often isn't something that's profound or intellectually sharp that actually touches other people, that actually shifts something a bit. I think in your case, in that moment, it was simply this authentic ring of something was coming through that was very true. And it touched me. And I think we can forget that the simplest things and the energy with which we offer them can be so effective. Yeah. And easy to diminish, easy to dismiss as not being enough, not being loud enough, not being strong enough, not being whatever enough. But it actually changes things.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Cool.
Do we just leave the show with an ellipsis at the end? And
I mean, it's been sort of the way we've gone through it. So
yeah.
I don't know. Can you? Yeah. Is there anything that sort of rises up in you as a neat kind of?
Well,
doesn't need to be neat, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I just, this entire time, those of us who have a lot of metacognition, so we're watching our thoughts, watching our thoughts, watching thoughts, or our words, or whatever it is. I've been watching myself this whole time and wishing that I had something tidier, or that nugget to send everyone home with. But I'm so glad that, in conversation with you, I never feel that's not the pressure. But if they're from the really fascinating journey we just took together, is there one point that really feels energetically important that you'd like to highlight as we wrap this up? Like what out of all of that really felt like supports and informs in some way the work that you're doing?
It's going to be really hard to, again, articulate something specific, but
Yeah.
the energy that I feel anytime I talk to you, like there's always that it is like an out breath of, can slow down and pause and embrace the contradictions and the messiness and all of that stuff. And actually, as you just said, the journey we've been on through this, it's like that. I think that's probably it. That these encounters, these conversations, these moments that we share with other people as well, it's about the journey of that connection. And it's not about, we often hear people talking about like how trying to use logic to maneuver somebody else or to prove someone wrong, and it's like, it's not reason and logic that is driving a lot of this stuff at the moment. As you touched on earlier, it's that that's sort of the disconnect, the fact that people are lonely, I think, is at the heart of a lot of this. And so I think just the embracing the journey of the conversation without needing those nice, neat, succinct bows on them.
Well, and if I may, it just came to me, I'm preparing to do this Creative Unboot Camp series that I haven't done for 6 or so years, Andy. And I've changed it quite a bit from what it used to be, partly because I think that people tend to view creativity as this sort of optional. It's a luxury thing. It's like, when times are easy, when I have plenty of money and things aren't so crazy, then I'm going to get creative. And of course, you and I hold a very different, feeling about that. Not that we are identical in this way, but I feel like it's just much more of a ubiquitous thing. But what I experienced with you today, and I love this because it's not conceptual, it's an actual experience. What I experienced with you today is the lowering of the anxiety, that polyvagal curve. There's this green zone, the ventral vagal state down below, and that's kind of it's the holy grail, Andy, of therapy, of many religious practices, of yoga, of meditation. It's a state. It's a nervous system state, and it's marked by feeling safe. It's marked by having a release of oxytocin. That's the chemical that we release when we give somebody a really genuine hug and we feel safe and we feel connected. What's interesting is I call that the creative green zone. It's like simply entering that space is opening ourselves up to becoming more open. And it makes us more aware of the resources around us. It makes us more aware of what we're connected to and what we care about deeply. The higher we get on the arousal scale with anxiety, to where we're hitting the freeze state, where nothing will work, nothing is going to happen, and we actually begin to prepare for death at some level, and especially in the very extreme expressions of that. But the more that we're able to simply come down into this state, we actually find our emotions are much more opened up. We find ourselves more connected to our environments and more aware. We lose the tunnel vision that happens when we get more and more anxious. And so I'll just wrap my part of this by saying I love that we got to experience a journey by having a interesting, curious, open conversation. We got to experience actually dropping into that zone. And that is the bed, the ground bed of creativity. That's where we find our creative nature. We find how gentle, how abundant it is, and how really wonderful it is to share with others. And that doesn't happen when we're freaked out of our minds.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. Because, I'm in that state as well. I have been for the last hour. And it's the fact that it's not avoiding talking about these things that actually, if talked about in a particular way, can evoke stress responses and things like that.
Right.
But actually, the way that we've talked about it has just felt, I don't know, hopeful in a way, and not in a trite way, but
right.
Yeah, kind of generative and energetically generative, and I feel like I have a bit more capacity to do something as a result. So
I do too. Yeah. And that really is its own reward, Andy. I think we often see creativity or whatever it might be as we get focused on the product of it rather than realizing the process of it is its own reward. It's its own reward,
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, Jacob, thank you. This has been so nice.
Yeah.
All right. Massive thank you to Jacob Nordby for taking the time to chat. It was a real balm from my perspective. I hope you're feeling as calm having listened to it as I was having spoken with Jacob that afternoon. I felt that real deep sense of active hope. It's in a kind of non-wishful, vague thinking kind of way. It was like, okay, yes, this is a reminder of how important it is to regulate our nervous systems as a foundational point for productive action, for clear thinking, and a sense of agency in the decisions that we take about how we move forward. When we're calm and regulated, who will I be in the face of this? Takes care of itself on the one hand, but it's also much more easy to identify who do I want to be in the face of this? How do I need to act in order to bring about that kind of reality with autonomy and choice? However restricted that sense of ability to choose how to act is in a kind of physical reality sense, we can decide who we want to be, how we want to be, and what we want to look back at and think, I wouldn't have approached that any differently. I've got no regrets about how I approached that. That was me at that time. It might not have gone to plan. It might not have ended up working out as I would have hoped it might. But it was a reflection of my best beliefs and my best knowledge and my best abilities at that time. I would love to hear any thoughts that you have on that idea and anything that might have come up during our conversation for you, or generally how you're feeling at the moment. And if you enjoyed it or connected with anything in this, I would love to invite you to join me in the Haven, which is our small community of gentle rebels who think and feel things deeply and want to embrace and use their sensitivity to creatively engage with a world that can feel hostile and alien to our nervous systems at times. I'll pop a link to find out more in the description, and you can find us at the-haven.co. And maybe you're sort of drawn to the idea of joining, but you're not sure about taking the plunge. Get in touch with me if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm always very happy to hear from you. So yeah, just drop me a message and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. All right, we are done for this week. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back again soon for another episode of the podcast. Until then, do remember that you are an artist. The world needs your art. Now go and make somebody's day. Bye-bye.
So shines a good deed in a weary world. In disguise, we can be, 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 we can all be angels in disguise.